we're going to be talking about storytelling. So, a big part of building a movement that is big and diverse enough is learning how to tell the story of who we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how someone else can get involved, sharing our vision and letting people see themselves in it. So, sessions content is brought to us by these two beautiful people, Hung and Monique. And to kick us off and ground us in like why storytelling is important, I want to ground us in the cycle of momentum that we use a lot. This you might have seen before is the momentum cycle. It takes us through escalating to building active popular support and into absorption back around to escalating. And storytelling is a really crucial part of the momentum cycle itself. We use it in all the different parts of the cycle. So I want to start by reading this quote. Activists assume that because something is true, it will be meaningful to the people that we're trying to reach. But in fact, the opposite is the case. If something is meaningful, people believe it to be true. So basically, what this is saying is we need to tell stories that are meaningful. We need to make our own meaning and not just spit facts at people. That's how we connect with people, and that's how we bring people along on a journey. To share a little bit about like why stories matter. Stories help us do all of these things. They connect us on an emotional level with others. They help us know why we do things and how we plan to do them. They move other people to take action. They can share our strategy of what we're doing and our purpose. They connect us with others, and they also, really importantly, build a culture of vulnerability and curiosity, which we really need in our movements. So, storytelling basically communicates our shared values and vision to motivate people to take action towards a shared goal. And we're going to dig into the values and vision of this a little bit more. So, starting with vision is the description of what the situation you're working towards look like. It's what change will look and feel like. Visions should mobilize emotions and make agency possible. So the prompt down the bottom, think of a campaign that has a really strong vision. You can think of the Tomorrow Movement mission statement. So we are an unstoppable movement of young people fighting for a society with good jobs, great public services, and a safe climate for all. We're organizing in our communities across the country to fight for a tomorrow that works for everyone, not just big business. So that really communicates our vision, good jobs, great public services, a safe climate for all, and a society that works for everyone, not big business. So you really want to have your vision that you're working towards come across really strong in the story that you're telling. And yeah, our visions should motivate people to act by making them feel some kind of emotion. So on the left, you can see emotions that block people from acting. So inertia, apathy, fear, isolation, self-doubt. These are all things that make people feel like they can't do anything for whatever reason. And we want to tell a story that communicates a vision that makes people feel one of the emotions on the right that will move them to take action. So we want people to feel urgency, anger, hope, solidarity, and the bottom one is you can make a difference. So telling people that they actually have the power and they can make a difference. So our visions should make people feel some of these emotions on the right so that we can motivate them to actually take action. So that's the vision part of it. Our stories communicate our values and our vision. This is the values part of it. So values are fundamental beliefs and principles that guide us. These values shape our campaign's culture. They explain why we're doing what we're doing and what our movement expects of those within it. So values can also be called principles sometimes, which leads to the Tomorrow Movement principles. You might have seen these before. Tomorrow Movement, we have 12 principles. Basically, when we're telling a story, our story should communicate at least some of these principles. So I might want to tell a story that demonstrates that we take initiative or that we lead from our communities or that we look out for each other. So at least some of our values, our principles should come across in the story that we're telling. Come back to that quote earlier. When we tell our story, our audience should immediately understand our vision, what we're working towards, and at least some of our values. Those are our principles. So that's what our stories are trying to get across. Stories share our why. We want to connect with people and get them actually motivated to act. When we do storytelling, there are three different parts. So we have our story of self. So this is kind of like a story of like why I've been called. You're claiming authorship of your story and letting others know the values that have moved you to act. You want to invite the listener to relate to you and your experience. So this is a very personal story. We have the story of us. So this is the shared values, experiences, and shared cause that we have as a community. We want to be telling a story of who we are as a collective, what is our collective interest, inviting the listener to identify with the collective. And then we have the story of now. So this is about kind of the urgency of the moment. So we see the world is not as it should be, and we've identified an opportunity to do something about it. So we want to consider the choices that we have in the spirit of hope. Each part, the self, the us, and the now involves the organizer taking people through the shape of the challenge, the choices that we face, and the possible consequences or outcome. So, to dive into each of these a little bit more and what each of them do. So, story of self, this is about why I do what I do, and we're trying to create a common ground between you and me, the listener, and myself. The story of us is about our shared values, our shared dream. So this builds a sense of community and solidarity and kind of defines the problem that we all face. And then we have the story of now. So this is about the opportunity that is at hand for us. So we're trying to create this sense of urgency, share a credible action logic, and motivate people to take some kind of specific action in alignment with our problem. So, just a summary of what we've covered so far on screen. So, our stories should communicate our vision and values to motivate people to take action. We should try to evoke one of the emotions that moves people to action instead of inhibiting it. So, that's the urgency, the anger, the hope, the sense that you can make a difference. We want to make people feel those things so that they actually want to take action. And there are three different components of a story. We have the story of self, which is about ourselves. We have the story of us, which is about the shared experiences and values that shape our community. And we have the story of now, which is about the current situation and what we all need to do now. So that is to break down each of those three different parts of our story. So to go into it a little bit more, let's talk about our story of self. So for the story of self, we structure it around challenge points or choice points. So these are moments when we faced a challenge, we made some kind of a choice, we experienced an outcome, and we learned a lesson. So this framework is also called challenge, choice, outcome. So you can reflect on like, when did I first care about being heard? When did I first experience injustice? When did I feel like I had to act? And what did I do? So this is really trying to get you to think about like, okay, like I was one way to begin with, and then something happened that caused me to make some kind of choice, and then something happened. I learned something changed. That is kind of what the story of self is taking you through. Once you've kind of identified a specific relevant choice point, you can dig deeper and ask yourself, what was the outcome of this choice? How did it feel? What did it teach me? There's a tendency sometimes to think that your personal story doesn't matter. Maybe it's not big enough or grand enough or dramatic enough, but what this is really trying to get you to think about is all of us have choices that we make. All of us have a story of self, and we need everyone to tell their stories. We need everyone to share personal stories with each other. That's how we connect with each other. We want everyone to feel like they actually have space to tell their stories. So, going a bit more into this structure of challenge, choice, outcome, there is an example on the screen that you can read, but it basically is an example of a challenge that I faced, a choice that I made, and then an outcome that happened. Here are some solo reflection questions that you can kind of take away to work on your story of self a little bit. So you can reflect on, why am I called to leadership? Why am I here? Why am I trying to get involved? What values move me to act? Have these values always been important to me? If not, when did that change? How might these values inspire others to take similar action? What stories can I tell from my own life about specific people or events that would show rather than tell how I learned or acted on those values? So I encourage you to take 5 to 10 minutes to reflect on these questions that are here, to talk a bit more about the story of us now. So this is the story of our community. So, a story of us expresses the values and shared experience of the us you want to invoke at the time. This means our us can and will change depending on who we're talking to. So, in my case, I might be talking to young people in the north of Melbourne. You might be talking to young people in whatever area you live in, or maybe you're looking at a more specific demographic, or maybe your demographic is a bit wider. But the us kind of changes depending on who you're organizing, what your organizing context is. So a story of us focuses on similar on choice points, but this time the character in your story of us is the community that you're motivating to act, and the choices those the community has faced. So a compelling story of us doesn't just highlight the challenges that a community faces, but it also lifts up stories of success and power to give people hope. So we don't just want to be focusing on the bad things that a community faces. We want to be telling a story of community strength and solidarity and working together. So here is an example, a story of us mapped on this framework of challenge, choice, outcome. So this is about a community who faces some kind of challenge, makes a choice about it, and had some kind of outcome that they created together. As you can see, the story is intended to be expressing solidarity and strength as a community, and hopefully motivating people to act. So here are some reflection questions you can take away once again. So What values do your community hold? Remembering that your community is the us in the story. What experiences have had the greatest impact on this community? What challenge has it faced? And what change does this community hope for and why? So these are reflection questions to help you craft the story of us. Moving on to the story of now. This is a story about what we're going to do. This is very centered on your campaign, whatever you're working on. So, in the context of the Youth Voter Block campaign, I'm going to use the national campaign goals as an example. You can see them on the left. So, we wanted to tell a powerful narrative about young people in the upcoming election, and we wanted to prove to all politicians that our generation is a force to be reckoned with. Because the Youth Voter Block campaign is about the power of youth. We represent around 50% of the voting population. We're trying to tell a really powerful story about young people and get young people actually excited to get involved in organizing. Once again, you can see the example here of the story of now mapped on the challenge choice outcome framework. This is basically the campaign story, like from the campaign guide that we had been using this whole time. Yeah, it goes through like the challenge that we are facing now, the choice that we are making or we're asking people to make, and the outcome. So this is what we're asking people to organize towards. So that is the story of self, the story of us, and the story of now framework. Yeah, we need all three components. You might use each of them differently in different contexts. So, for example, in something like a relational meeting or a persuasive conversation, you'll probably share a lot of your story of self and us because you want to be connecting with someone. Then, towards the end, you would bring in more of the story of now when you're trying to make a pitch and get someone involved. So, this framework is really useful to kind of break up and like really intentionally choose which parts of the story you want to be sharing depending on your context and how you're trying to connect with someone. So that is kind of how we use storytelling in our movements.